Let you know. Here we go. This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air. We had a little bit of a hiccup because of the net, but want to introduce you to Louise or Louis. How you doing tonight? You're a podcaster, a real estate guy, runner, and family man, entrepreneur. How's it going?
Oh, doing great, Phantom. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here.
We're going to talk about escaping the cycle of poverty as the main topic of our discussion tonight. But also, I want to again talk to you about a couple of things. Maybe we can kind of set up. But I always ask anybody who's on the show a couple of things that they kind of start off like, what motivates you and why do you do what you do, as kind of a backdrop to your telling your story.
Yeah, I think what motivates me really there's two big things. One is setting up my future generations to be able to pursue their passions and dreams, and ideally change the world. That's one. And two is just to inspire others to chase their dreams and live a full life.
That's cool. So you found podcasting, and I've been a podcaster for a while, but maybe you can talk about, you've got a lot of different hats, but since I'm a podcaster, I'm kind of interested in your podcasting hat. So, I've been a podcaster since 2016, founded a couple of years ago, and found it was a really cool platform for what I was trying to get across. How did you get into podcasting? What was your entry point?
Yeah, I mean, it started as a consumer, really. I discovered podcasts a long time ago, maybe 12, 14 years ago. And I used it as a way, maybe even longer than that, as a way of just learning, right? Somebody told me, I think when, the iPod, the iPhone came out, or even before that, what was it was iPod, right?
Yeah,
And I remember
iPod.
you could just download all this information. Yeah. And at that time I used to brew beer. I was a home brewer.
Oh, wow.
And there wasn't a lot out there. There was one book my wife got me as a gift and a little kit. The book was called The Joy of Home Brewing, and it was a kit and that she got me to go with it. And as I read the book, I really got more and more into it. And then I'm trying to figure out, how do I learn more about this? There wasn't much there. And that was, I think somehow on the iPod, I came across some like brew guys that they talked about brewing, and I was like, oh my God. And I started following that. And then since then I've used it as a mechanism for learning, right?
Yeah, it's like a master class.
Exactly. Anything I wanted to learn. I eventually left the homebrew world, but got into running, and I didn't know anybody who ran really, or especially I was trying to run a marathon. I didn't really know anybody who did that. And I found the podcast, the Marathon Training Academy. And, and that was it. And then around, right around COVID, I started meeting people who were podcasters. And I guess I just thought it was just this magical thing that you had to be, this really skilled person at and, to do. But then I started hearing about, I think around COVID, more people doing it, and you can do it. It was easy. And that's when the idea really came to life. And I was a part of a local mastermind group here in Denver, where we were planning for the year what we were going to do. And one of the other guys in my mastermind was talking about how he wanted to start a podcast. And I'm like, oh, I've been talking about doing that for a while too. And there we go. We just were like, all right, let's start a podcast. We just started talking about it, and we realized we were very aligned in what we wanted to do. And so we kicked it off, probably started planning it like end of, it was like probably December of 22. Mm-hmm. And then we released our first episode February 20th of 23. And since then we've released at least one episode every Tuesday. Now we're up to 2 episodes a week, every Tuesday and Friday. As of today, I have 110 episodes recorded, but we've only released 96. So we're coming up on our 100th episode, 100th episode, which is really exciting. And
it's very exciting because
it's amazing.
The typical podcast typically only goes maybe 6 episodes.
And that's what I hear. That's what I hear.
I'm at like 1,131, kind of crazy.
Oh man, you are a true veteran. And are
Yeah,
you
we
still into it?
yeah, I mean, I just did one earlier today. I've done 2 a day this week.
Wow.
I typically do maybe 5 or 6 a week. Been
Wow.
doing since
Yeah.
2016, and I'm a live podcaster, which, I looked at doing a highly edited, produced podcast, but I like the idea of kinda like a jazz fusion podcast where I talk to somebody and it's a real kind of conversation in the moment,
Yeah.
and, you capture maybe things you didn't wanna capture, but it feels authentic. That's just my take on it, why I'm in it, because I
Yeah.
take my music kinda concepts, like, I like to do a lot of experimental kinda in the moment type of music rather than highly composed music, and so I
Yeah.
said, "Why not take that aesthetic and do it for podcasting?" And I
Yeah.
found for what I like to do, it works. But I feel like podcasting like you is a master class. Like,
Yeah.
every time I've talked to somebody, I've learned so much. I mean, I get to talk to PhDs, I get to talk to business owners, filmmakers,
Right.
musicians. I have a very wide-ranging podcast, so I talk to pretty much anybody who's interesting to me.
That's it, man. I'm doing the same, and I'm finding it. They say like the riches are in the niches, and you want to niche down. But
Yeah,
I don't find that interesting. I want to do this. This is now my favorite thing I do, and I want to do this for a long time. And I feel like if I'm too niche down, my interest changed too much. I just told you I went from doing home brewing pretty
yeah,
hardcore at one point in my life where I don't even drink beer anymore. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
so
you got
it's
a lot
like
of
it's a
hats.
different thing. So I don't want to I don't want to pigeonhole myself into anything. So I kind of keep it broad. Same thing. If I find somebody is interesting, I want to podcasting is a great way to get to talk to them.
Yeah, I find it's like, if I think about all the people I've interviewed, they got this massive Rolodex, and I did
Yeah.
have a purpose when I started.
Yeah.
I did only interview musicians. I'm a musician. You
Okay.
can see all my scents behind me.
Yeah, I
But,
saw that.
but, I initially my goal was to interview emerging independent songwriters from around the world,
Yeah.
and I've been able to interview Grammy award-winning producers, independent producers from, like, every country, like
Wow.
Japan, Argentina, and then
Amazing.
I found, a way to integrate to, like, authors, poets, painters, so it was still creators. And then
Yes.
I started to say, well, an entrepreneur is a creative.
Yes.
Somebody that's like a CEO of a business, they're creative.
Yeah.
And then I started to talk to therapists because, you know, musicians and creators, we need therapists.
We all do.
We need therapy all the time because like,
Podcasters need them too.
yeah, so it's like, why not talk to life coaches and therapists and mental health professionals? So I started opening and say, why not thread the needle with like the idea of music and creativity and take concepts of you know music and harmony, disharmony, dissonance, and weave those into conversations and try to
Yeah.
find common threads that would integrate with multiple topics. And that's where we are. It's like we get to talk to people like yourself who are, you have a lot of hats. You're a podcaster, you're a real estate guy, you were a runner, you were a beer guy. Why not talk to people and find out what makes them tick?
Yeah.
What's going on? Because there's a lot of things that people will find common threads in their life. Like when you have a conversation with somebody, you have to start asking them like, what's going on in your life? What are your lessons learned? What have you found? What are your passions? So maybe we go there with your passion, and we know like one of the things we want to talk about is like escaping the cycle of poverty, and maybe you want to start with your story and how
Sure.
that concept like weaves into what you're trying to do today.
Yeah, thank you. I grew up, we grew up moving around a lot when we were young. But I lived in Queens, New York for a while. And, but what I really call home is a town in Rhode Island called Central Falls, Rhode Island, which is right outside of Providence.
Hmm.
And a lot of people never heard of Central Falls, but it's a little square mile city. And at one point, it was the most densely populated city in America. In that square mile, I think there's over 80,000 people who live there. And It's always been it's a factory town, and it's always kind of been a immigrant town. Like every generation, whatever immigrants are coming into this country, they're going to have probably, if they're living in New England, they're probably going to live in Central Falls, Rhode Island. Right. So, and what's really neat is you can see the impact, like they each leave. Right.
Mhm.
And you can also see how, what was the prior generation based on how the homes are, because like the new generation will probably rent from the prior generation. So like my
Yeah.
friends that I grew up with now are the landlords in Central Falls, right?
Wow.
But we all rented there, and we probably rented from somebody who was Portuguese, for example. That was a big Portuguese population before my generation was there. And my generation was mostly Latino immigrants, people from Latin America. And the primary countries they came from were either Dominican Republic, or a lot of Puerto Rican, which is American, but
Mhm.
and then a lot of Guatemalan, and then the people from my country, which are Colombia, South America,
Wow.
and then you also had quite a big influence of people from Cape Verde, which is a small island off the west coast of Africa. A lot of people never heard of it, but I grew up amongst a lot of Cape Verdeans, and what a
Yeah.
beautiful culture, by the way. Just
My wife
beautiful people.
my wife visited. Well, my wife's from Barbados, but she traveled a lot, so she actually's been there, so I'm aware of
Oh,
it.
cool. Yeah. So, I mean, it was a very ethnically diverse city, right? And then, of course, you had a lot of African American and a lot of white American, and we all lived together, both harmoniously and and non-harmoniously, right? I think whenever you have these ethnic conclaves that are put together, there's lots of movies that have and gangs and mafias that have been created from that, right? Like they go on to, as children, they all hated each other and fought, and as adults, they all learned to work together and build empires, which was great, right?
Yeah, it's
But the other,
interesting, yeah.
yeah, and the other thing about it was a lot of during the era that I came lived there, a lot of the immigrants who came weren't they were very poor immigrants who came already to the country. There were some, like some of the Dominicans, they came with educations and such and had kids there. But for the most part, like the Colombians, the Puerto Ricans, the Cape Verdean, the rest of us really didn't come from families that were well off and had educations and all that. So a lot of us were first generation, right? We either were the kids who came as young kids and immigrated here, or we were the sons and daughters of them. And they weren't households that their parents had an education and were middle upper class. They were, so we didn't have that. And because it was really a small town that was away from the big city like Providence or Boston or New York,
Mhm.
we didn't have interactions with all the other classes, right? It's much like some of the rural American towns in America now. So you don't have, in Queens, for example, we lived in a building, and next door in my building could have been a doctor. There could have been an engineer. I went to the local school where there were kids who came from other buildings that were well off and what have you. And I remember I was learning Italian in 5th grade. We had opportunities to go to Italy. We'd go to field trips in the city, like to go see Broadway shows and all that. And then we moved to Rhode Island. We're not getting any of that, right?
Yeah,
Like we'd be lucky to get a field trip once a year, right? And
yeah.
we're not interacting. Nobody knew a doctor, nobody knew an engineer, nothing like, nobody knew anybody who had a high school degree. Very few, a college degree, and very few even had high school degrees for their parents. So the poverty mindset, as you can imagine, was very rampant, right? Like that, most of us, I think it was cooler. We aspired more to be something that society perceives as negative, right? Like a drug dealer or a gangster,
Mhm.
just to be real, like that we aspired for that, they were the ones that got the pretty girls, they were the ones who had money. They were the ones with the nice cars. So a lot of us aspired to do all that kind of stuff. So, like amongst my friend group, and by the way, my friends, my wife and I talk about this all the time. I think the friends I grew up with are some of the most brilliant minds in the world. I mean, I just never was challenged intellectually like I was growing up in Central Falls, Rhode Island, right? But even after I went to college and everything, but everybody took different paths and didn't go there. But like, and now the people I've stayed in touch with, which is very few of them, 2 or 3, we've all got at least a master's degree now. We've got very good jobs or businesses or what have you, good families. We've stayed stable. There weren't divorces. There aren't like the drug, which is interesting. And I think we stuck together. And there was one friend in particular, Randy. Shout out to Randy if he ever hears this. But he was the first friend I ever had who went to college, and he just went to community college. And I used to cut school to go and hang out with him on the college campus. And then which was funny. And he also was the one who like used to cut everybody's hair, right? So he was like the local barber. We used to go cut class to go hang out in his basement, get fades, right? And that's what we did. And everybody, he made money by getting, and I think because he was a barber, that was like a cool job, right? You can get away with not trying to be a gangster or anything because you were the barber, right? And so that kept him out of trouble. And he did go to college, CCRI. His parents, ironically, were the ones who were educated. They were Dominican, and they had an education. They were teachers back in Dominican Republic. And so they exposed, and I think to him to more than the rest of us. And then he exposed me and a couple of others who just wanted to go hang out on campus at the community college. And we didn't go because we wanted to, learn some stuff, right? We went because A, we wanted to cut class, and B, we wanted to, there were a lot of pretty girls there, just to be real.
College, you can have a lot of older, pretty girls.
Yeah, that's right. And then, coming from where we did, and actually he ended up transferring to University of Rhode Island, and then we'd go hang out there. And that was like a big party school. So we'd go hang out up there and be gone for days. And it was just a party scene. And that's what really got me thinking about college. Like, oh man, college is, these are like great parties. Yeah, these are amazing.
You see some people get intimidated by the rigor of the coursework, but if you kind of are shown like, oh, this place is fun.
That's right.
And there's coursework, and like, well, you might get drawn into say, hey, this is a happening place.
That's right.
I need to be there, and then I'll have to get some discipline to not fail out. But like, you start to realize that this is something I can aspire to. I don't have to say, oh, that's not something I should even try. Right. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's what got me to want to go to college. I just saw like, wow, here's all these people, they're having amazing parties, is having a great time, and there's no fights or anything after, it's just a good time. And, the parties I grew up going to, they were, you always were, risking your life after, right? It could be a fight or worse. Right. And so I just thought like, this is cool. I want to go. I want to get, and that's what got me to start thinking about college. And going into my senior year, I was always like a BC student. I was pretty smart. I can ace a test, no problem. But if I didn't get my homework done in school, I wasn't taking it home. So that's what kept me from getting A's. And so I just didn't apply myself enough. And it was because I was afraid to like, walk out of school carrying books, because then I'd be looked at as a nerd, and I'm probably gonna get jumped. And so it's a survival mechanism, right? So I don't know. Then my senior year, I learned how to, start doing my homework. A lot of it I still got done in school, learned how to do things like that. I would intentionally get detention sometimes just to get
it done.
my work done in there. I mean, it was, you start learning how to play the game, and I got straight A's. I did all right on my math side of my SATs. I was always really good at math. And I got into a program called Educational Talent Search, ETS, and they would take kids, first-gen kids like us who might have some potential and from different schools around Rhode Island that were in similar situations, and they take us to visit different schools. So then they took us to like UConn and BU, Boston University and other schools in New England. And they took us to Northeastern one time. And at Northeastern, I applied like there, and they accepted me there.
That's cool.
It wasn't like I filled out an application. And I couldn't believe it. Oh no, I think I did apply before. We had to have the application to go on the trip. So I had applied, but that was like the week before. And I remember you had to submit your essay like typed up. And our school only had like a couple of typewriters. Well, they had typewriters, but I hated always having to redo it. And we had only like 4 or 5 computers in the whole
Uh,
school, and you had to like sign up in advance, and always like, I was a little guy, so like I'd have to fight for it, and I'm like, oh. And there was this one girl who had, her parents had gotten her word processor, so we'd go to her house and work on it at
right
her
there.
house.
Yeah, that's
And
smart.
yeah, and did it there, and sent it in that way. And yeah, we got it, and I went, we went with the trip with ETS, and they reviewed it, and on the spot they accepted me.
Well,
And
that's
I
awesome.
was like, man, I was start crying just thinking about this. Like, I had
Well,
forgotten the story.
that's really cool when there are people who understand that giving a young kid a leg up instead
Yeah,
of just throwing them out. There's a mindset today where there are people who say, "Well, we shouldn't do that. We
right.
shouldn't," because I'm a product of like I went to Bowdoin College, but what happened
Oh
was
yeah.
I'm from Springfield, Mass. I'm a northeastern
Oh,
guy,
snap. Yeah.
and there was a guy who went to Bowdoin. He was a lawyer in town, and he would go to the high school. I was at classical high school, public high school, and he would go to the high school and try to find kids who would be potentially good candidates to go to Bowdoin. And
Yeah.
he was a Bowdoin alum, and he brought us down on a plane, like
Wow.
5 of us who were like
Wow.
on the honor society. And I was thinking of going to UMass. I had been in an
Yeah.
engineering program, and every summer I was doing these engineering courses.
Yeah.
And I've been picked for that. I was given this, and this is in the 70s. I'm a child of the 70s.
Okay.
And so, like, then when I got, to high school, this guy came and he brought us down in a plane, like 5 of
Wow.
us. And we
Wow.
got to stay at Bowdoin for like 3 days. We applied. We got to, talk to professors, hang out at the frats, see the whole what this was about. And I was like, well, I had been at UMass and I liked UMass. But then when I saw Bowdoin, I said, wow, this is a whole different level. It was like
Yeah.
the class sizes were like 15, 20 kids in a class.
Okay.
Professors lived on campus, on
Yeah.
houses, and you could go visit the professor and
Yeah.
ask him questions. And I'm like, wow, that's different than asking the TA question. So I'm
Right.
like, I was like, well, this is what I want now.
Yeah.
And I was able to get it. But that's because that guy, that lawyer, he would go to the high schools and try to get kids to come, and he
Yeah.
would bring them down. And
Yeah.
I wondered, like, are there people that really are willing to do that today? Because they seem to be like, oh, I think you should just do it by yourself.
No, well, there are some programs out there. Like, I unfortunately I scored really high on my math SATs, and I didn't even know what that meant back then, right? But it got me an engineering scholarship, and that's how I had a full ride my first year, and I lost it, and we can talk about that too. But most of my other friends who went to in the same, all like the first gen kids, especially kids of color, we all started gravitating towards each other, right? So like all of the Latin American Student Organization and NU Black Student Organization and the
Mhm.
Caribbean Student Organization, we all hung together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And we were all, most of us were from first generation, same kind of thing. But what I found was a lot of the other kids, they were in this program, and at Northeast it was called Project Ujima, and it gave them something to prepare. Like they had to go that summer and prepare. And actually, URI had something like that too. And I got into it, and I didn't do it because I didn't want to go that summer and prepare. And what they do is they teach you like just the executive skills so you can do well, right? So
Mhm.
like I didn't know how to type. I didn't
Oh,
really
yeah,
know how to use a computer, all that. So like they teach you how to do that basic stuff. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And I think that that's a big thing that a lot of people take for granted that, we just didn't have, and I didn't get it. So then when I went to college for real, and I'm started even actually, even another great point, FEMA would tell you they would be there to like advocate to their professors for you, because as you know, like a first gen student,
Yeah, you
we're
don't have
taught
the
like the
history.
teacher's the enemy. It's like the
Yeah,
cops, right? They're
yeah,
the enemy. They're not there to help you. They're
yeah,
there, right? So like I never thought about going to talk to a professor about helping me with
with anything.
what I don't understand. That they're my friend. They're there to help me. And if you did that Ujima program, you were taught that early on. As a matter of fact, they would come out and so my buddy Randy, who did a similar program called Talent Development at University of Rhode Island, he was the one when I was getting ready to flunk out. He's like, "Yo, why don't you go talk to professors
talk
and
to
they'll help you
advisors.
out.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
talk.
maybe they'll give you some, let you take a test over, tell you what to study, all
Yeah,
that. I'm
because
like, yo, I can't do that. But he
yeah,
convinced me, and that changed my life. That got me through college. I got back in, and when I was flunking out, and by the way, when I was flunking out, I wasn't a knucklehead. Like I was really trying hard. I thought like I saw the opportunity and I was like committed to like, I wasn't partying at first. I'm like, I got to keep the scholarship. It's crazy, but I couldn't hang. Like I really, a 5-page paper on computer would take me all week. And then I still had to do, calculus and all this stuff. My highest level of high school math was trigonometry up to that
mhm.
point.
Yeah,
So there was
that's
nothing
where
beyond that. That was the highest you could offer. And then I'm starting at calculus. I'm like, whoa, what I just
yeah,
didn't
that's the
understand.
kind of stuff that people don't realize is like
Right.
if you're in the like public school system in the inner city
Yeah.
versus the public school system in the suburb. The
Right.
kids in the suburb will get up to calculus, they'll get up to physics. The kids in the inner city school will barely get through geometry.
Well,
Like
I'm going to argue that it's not
maybe
even the
they
inner
changed
city.
that.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that the inner city is it depends on where, right? If you're
yes,
in an inner city in LA, for example, or here in Denver, a big city, you still got exposure to all of those opportunities that everybody else does. You can go to a top school, you even within your school, you got all kinds of resources given to you. When it's a small city without many resources,
that's
Central
the
Falls was
problem.
one of those cities that
Or
went bankrupt.
rural
Right,
areas
or
too.
rural area. Yeah, right now I think there's a really big demand. Rural kids, I feel bad for them big time. But
When
Springfield
yeah,
wasn't. I mean, I know Springfield well. I spent a lot of time studying these communities, and I know Springfield was a lot like that,
yeah.
right? Where it didn't have a lot of opportunities and privileges.
And the problem is
So
the public school had this thing called track.
right,
So it had like if you like I was lucky I was in the honors and advanced placement.
yeah,
But I was there because my mom and my dad fought to make me get in those classes. If you didn't
right.
have a parent that knew that you should fight to get your kid in the honors and advanced placement track, because if
That's
you
right.
didn't, then they wouldn't learn calculus. They wouldn't learn how to do computers. And so, like when they get to a school like a UMass, they wouldn't know how to type. They
That's
wouldn't know
right.
how to do the calc. They wouldn't know how to write the papers, and so they're going to fail, right?
Yeah,
But
that's right.
if you the problem is like unless you had somebody outside your parents, like your preacher or an advocate or a social worker that did what my mom did. And I
Yeah,
did see there were some that did help other kids,
yeah,
but there are other kids that got lost in the tracks and they got sent to the track to go to commerce school. And
yeah.
commerce school was kind of designed for you to be like a secretary
Oh,
or to
okay.
be a blue collar worker, you go be an auto, mechanic or
Right,
be a
right.
plumber. And so you would go to trade or commerce and then you would learn, those skills, but you would not
Yeah,
learn the skills to be on a liberal arts direction.
that's
They
right.
they point you toward like the blue collar direction, which is not bad. You want to be an electrician, go do it, but you got to pass the test. You still got
That's
to
right.
pass the test.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you had a big advantage with your parents advocating for you. That's huge. When you're in a town like ours, where 90% of the population is an
It's
immigrant
hard to have it.
population.
They probably wouldn't know what to do.
Right. Our parents didn't. My first language is Spanish. I didn't know English. I was in ESL till third grade. So like they wouldn't know how to advocate for us. They had no and keep in mind they didn't graduate high school. Education
Yes.
wasn't a priority. Between ninth grade and senior year, 50% of our class would drop out. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and we also had like the highest teen pregnancy rate, all of the
All the
metrics
things
you don't
going
want to
against
be leading on,
you. Yeah.
we were
Everything's
leading. And it's
yeah,
still
all
that way
that's
to this day, you
yeah,
know?
that's the cycle that because like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally.
If the parents and the grandparents have never seen those opportunities or nobody showed them there's other ways,
That's right.
they're gonna kind of reinforce a certain like it kind of like American caste system,
That's
right?
right.
If you're kind of stuck in a caste, right?
Yeah,
It's not necessarily because of race, it's kind of like economics, and then it could be the language difficulties.
that's right.
Like, so if you don't have the mother tongue, and then people you don't know that you could go into AP honors, and your
That's right.
parents don't know how to get you in there. They don't
That's
know
right.
how to fill out the form to get you in there. So
Yeah.
even though there's a form, nobody goes and tells somebody, hey, there's a bilingual version of this form.
Right.
Maybe you
Or
should fill it
nobody
out.
recognizes the benefit either. Like as kid, I actually tested out of Spanish because I didn't, I was just lazy. I didn't want to. So I just took the TOEFL test just to get through. But but for me, it was like, what's the easiest way to get through this stuff? It wasn't about the challenge to myself because I didn't see the benefit of getting a higher education until my senior year, where I'm like, oh, I need to do good to get into college, because I want to go party. But, you know,
Yeah, and there's some people
but
who don't see the connection between, like, the upward mobility,
right,
because kinda like the cast is kinda like, well, you're never gonna be in that group. Like, you're not
right.
gonna be the doctor, lawyer, stockbroker, IT guy. That's not where you're gonna be. You're gonna be a truck
That's right.
driver, plumber, electrician, auto worker, machine
And by
man.
the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I think
There's
that
nothing
that's
wrong. There's some people that don't they'd rather be a truck driver. They'd rather be in the
oh,
union.
totally. And
They'd
right
rather
now they
be a
might
plumber.
be better off than going to college too, which is
Yeah,
a
well,
discussion
they're
for
well,
another day.
yeah, 'cause of it even in my industry now, we
Yeah.
used to need to have people with bachelors and masters, right?
Yeah.
But we have a lot of self-taught kids that know programming because they got so passionate about it. They got into their Nintendo and then they wanted to know how it was coded. They
Right.
got into their PlayStation and their Xbox and they actually started figuring out what's going on in these games
Yeah.
and started learning how to code. And
Wow.
we've brought in people with no degrees that are really good designers and
Yeah.
coders. And then they've gone and kind of got it reversed.
Right.
Came in with a skill set and a capability that, wow, these guys are good. And then they went and got their certificates and degrees after the fact,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like, so you don't always have to have it to get in the door anymore. You have to either have a passion for wanting to learn
Right.
or
Right. Well, I would even argue we've talked about this on my show quite a bit, and my wife was in higher education, and she's an admissions counselor. Her and I talk about this all the time. I would almost argue, like in our household now, both my wife and I have masters. We're privileged people now. We've broken the cycle, so our kids could go. They don't need to go to college. We can get any connection we want for them to get their foot in the door, right?
Mhm.
Do we want them to go to college? Yeah, it'd be nice. But my daughter finished a year early, took a gap year, and you know what she did with her gap year? She was going to beauty school. She thought she just wanted to dye hair, and we're like, you know what? That's cool. You're not gonna, like you don't need that. If that's what makes you happy, go for it. You know what I
But yeah,
mean?
sometimes you
Yeah,
find something later. Like,
totally.
sometimes I've found people like they weren't ready to go when they
Right,
were 19. And if
right.
they did, they would have messed up. But
Yeah,
by the time they were like 27, they actually found what they were into. And then they went
yeah,
and got their
yeah.
degree and their master's. And they kind of knew, like, I'm glad I didn't go and do something where I was young and actually get totally disenchanted, where
Totally.
I actually found where I wanted to be. So sometimes it's like a non-traditional or like not the way people thought it should be. But
Right.
like the way the world is like there's so many ways you can learn
Yeah.
and there's so many capabilities out there that are kind of non-traditional that you could actually get into apprenticeships. You can get
Absolutely.
into like all kinds of things. My daughter's an artist and she's been in these collectives of artists and now she's an art director and she doesn't have a degree,
Yeah.
but she's done so much work with these collectives. Now she's a director of a collective
Wow.
and she's like a master artist. She does logos for companies and stuff.
Amazing.
She's a passionate artist since she was like 7 years old. She was going to like art programs. And
Yeah.
so she built up a skill set in the arts. And now she's like into management. She's working with a disability kind of group of artists that are pushing artists with disabilities. And so
Right.
she has grant programs, and she actually now has an organization that they give out grants to artists that have disabilities and help them get their work in the galleries and stuff. But it was because she had a passion, and
Yeah.
now she's going and kind of backfilling in her degree certificates and going and doing it that way. But
Yeah.
she's already in what she wants to be,
Yeah.
and she
That's
was able
awesome.
to be what she wanted without having to say, "Well, can art be a day job or is it is her job?"
Yeah.
'Cause
I
that's what she wanted to do.
That's it. I love that. And I think that's when we go back to your original question about what motivates me. Like that's exactly what I want for my future generations, right? So they can go and pursue their passions, like we talked about. So because once you figure that out and you have the liberty to do that, then everything else is going to fall into place, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had to do it as a form of survival, right?
Yeah.
College was really an escape. It was my way out of the hood, right?
But
And
it's
if
a
I
way
get
that people tell you that that's the door out of,
right,
like, Springfield, Mass, unless you
yeah,
wanna work, at Smith& and Wesson on the floor working the machine, making the guns.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You think
But
you could do that, and there's a lot of people did that, and that's fine. They
yeah,
work in the Monsanto factory, they work in Smith& and Wesson, they work in a lot of these factories, kinda
yeah,
mills, because it's like a
yeah,
mill town, it's like a modern mill town type of structure. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's what you want. But if
right,
you wanna be able to go a little further and to kinda run your own show and not be part of, like, the machine, not be a
right.
factory worker, you wanna do something else, but you
That's
wanna
right.
have your own ideas, you wanna be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah,
So, there's a different path, but
that's right.
there are different ways to get to that path now.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
100%. And, I think that's what's, going back to you say I wear a lot of different hats. I think part of that is trying to figure out, what hat do I want to wear? Because, all right, it's like part of the escape of that cycle of poverty is, you're in a stage of survival all your life, right? And once you can get past that survival stage and you can think freely, and have
breathing room,
take
breathing room.
exactly some breathing room, then you're like, oh shit, now what? Right? You don't know what you don't know that you want, and so life becomes a big exploration. So I think the people who have the biggest advantage in life are the people who can figure out what their passions are early and are capable, have the freedom to go pursue them early on, like your daughter has. So kudos to you for allowing for that. That's
I
awesome.
wanted to
And
give her the space because initially,
yeah,
we were thinking like, "Oh, she's gonna go to MIT," because
okay,
she was kind of an egghead, and,
yeah.
uh, and we had an opportunity. We lived in Japan when she was,
Oh, love
like in
Japan.
kindergarten, so she was able to go to a
Amazing.
preschool and a kindergarten in Japan,
Yeah,
and so she got this leg up on everybody with this Japanese education system that she got really
yeah,
early,
yeah,
right? And so the discipline of a Japanese system is unbelievable, right?
sure.
So in the level of information she was getting, so
Yeah,
she immediately got this level of discipline that most kids don't have,
yeah.
and she got this like Japanese kind of zero defect mentality,
Yep, yep.
really high learning kind of
Yeah,
process. And so then when she came back, she was really good at math and science, but she's a really good artist and she's
okay.
a good musician. So she could go multiple ways. And then she decided like I'm gonna go the art way.
Yeah,
And her art was so good. And then she had the kind of business mind or a logical mind to say, I don't want to be a starving artist. I want to be an artist that I can make money. I can do
mhm,
logos and get paid. I
mhm.
can go do work for hire and I can get paid. I can get all kinds of deals in terms
Right,
of
right.
understanding that everything that's out there that has to be advertised is art work for in marketing. And if you figure out how to get yourself integrated into that as a work for hire or a consultant, boom, then suddenly art is not something that's like, oh, it's this willy nilly thing. It's actually
Yeah,
something that's a sure thing.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So
Yeah,
you turn things into opportunities where people say, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that." It's like she never had this kind of mindset of what you can't do. So what
yeah,
is it that you can? We should be able to do that. So let's go do it.
yeah. That's right.
And
Yeah, I mean
that's what we
that's
want the
such a
next
big level up.
generation to have, right?
Exactly, and they're gonna get even stronger and pass that on to generations beyond that, which is great. And it isn't just gonna be about survival, right?
Yeah,
So,
because that's the problem. We get so many people just like day to day survival,
yeah,
you know, and it's really kind of numbing. Like if all
yeah,
you care about is paycheck to paycheck, just surviving the bare minimum necessary,
yeah.
then you never get those kind of light bulb ideas, right?
That's right.
Because it's such a fight. It's like you're having a fight to be just stable every day.
That's right.
That's where we want to get more people out of that state, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think one of what seemed like a big disadvantage early on in life, I now view as um a great advantage now, in that I feel very liberated. And I see in a lot of people who grew up with all the resources they can possibly want, great homes, everything, and they live in a state of fear, right? And a state of stagnancy, and they don't pursue their dreams. They're not doing anything but working for the man and complaining about it, and they're afraid that the sky is falling. And now we're in election season, so, oh no, this person's going to get elected, no, that one is, so the world's going to come to an end. And I think when you grow up with true hardship, or you've gone through true hardship and you survive, you realize shit ain't that bad.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if
yeah.
shit ain't that
It's all
bad,
relative. It's
right,
relative.
right,
I've
so
I've run into the trust fund kid
yeah,
that is just not motivated.
totally,
I've run into the kid that has everything. Somebody gave him a sports car when they were 21,
right,
get to go to France, get to go to spring
yeah,
break, get to do. But then guess what? They're sitting around. They tell me how unhappy they were, how they don't want to be here, and I'm like, wait a
right,
minute.
yeah,
I got to work really hard. This kid's got a freaking Porsche.
right,
Then he
right,
told me how he doesn't want to be around. I'm like, really?
yeah,
That's hard to get my head around, but I can
yeah,
understand it because there's something that was missing, like, there was love missing.
yeah,
There was, like, his parents gave him the material thing, but they didn't give him the tools
so well
to
put,
really survive, and they
yeah,
gave him things they thought were about survival, but he's not, those are material things, he's not really doing that well, and I'm like,
right,
"That's so interesting because you would think, because 'cause he's got the Porsche, he's got the clothes, he's got the money, he doesn't have to worry about being on the street, but he's still not happy." It's like, that's hard to get your head around, but then again, you can get your head around it, if you know what I mean.
yeah, it's wild to me, and then again, I think the advantage that we have is that knowing that no matter what, if they're unhappy, oftentimes they're also in a state of fear, like, you again, that the sky's falling, you can't do this, I can't do that, because this will happen, or that, and once you've had so many of those things happen, then you start to realize, it ain't that bad. Actually, those times when those things happened, they were actually good times. Like, my childhood was actually awesome, despite how I explained it. Like, I loved it, man. We go outside every day and play, like, pick up basketball or handball or stickball or whatever it was, and we had a great time. So those are still some of the best friends I've had. Again, some of the smartest people I've ever known. All kinds of great things. We were, that I don't see some kids doing now, or even adults. Because they worry about what could go wrong. And now I'm
Yeah.
thinking, like, what could go wrong? Ain't that bad, you know?
Yeah, it's like I'm a kid, 70s kid, and I was always jumping ramps with my bike,
Yeah.
using
Oh God,
skateboard,
yeah.
skinning my knee. I didn't have a helmet.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, we were jumping ramps, doing skateboards,
Yeah.
bouncing all over everything, getting my knee scraped riding my bike or
Right.
Schwinn or something. And then we didn't really think about, like, so many people today is like, I understand people should be safety conscious, and nobody thought about
Sure.
wearing
Sure.
helmets, but there's just so much fear, like you said. It's like,
Yeah.
kid in the 70s, I'd be jumping a ramp. I never thought that would hit my head. Right? I never thought that I would, oh, I'm gonna get hurt, so I'm never gonna try that. I would
Yeah.
go and do things. I mean, it didn't cost a lot of money to have my skateboard. It was just out there having fun outside. And now it's like, where's that kind of adventure? Like you get the old, an older person that never rode a bike, they'll never jump on it. They never learned how to do it because they're scared of what anybody's gonna think if they fall off the bike. But when you're that
Right.
kid learning the bike, you don't care that you're falling down every 5 seconds.
Right.
You just do it till you learn it
That's
because
right.
you got that child, like, okay, I'm gonna do it. What does it matter? I scrape my knee, whatever. I get up again, do it again.
Yeah. 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 And we as a society, I think parents, we worry so much about our kids that we instill that too. We're like, oh no, don't do that because you're gonna get hurt, you know? And then that fear keeps breeding in. I'm thinking, like, that's killing,
Yeah,
that creativity, that,
yeah. The thing you need, that spark you need to go maybe tread a little water,
yeah.
right? But it's like if your mom's saying, "Oh, you can't tread water," right?
Yeah.
We gotta keep you on the shallow part of the pool. You're never gonna go into the deep end.
Right.
But you're not gonna learn how to deal with the deep end.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we need a healthy dose of it too, but you know, too much of it can be bad,
But it's a
right?
balance. It's like what I find in life, like when I was living in Japan, it's like, it's kind of an Eastern philosophies.
Yeah,
There's some extremism in terms of like, people being really crazy about staying at work all day
yeah,
to
yeah,
the point where they live in a capsule hotel. Like,
yep,
it's
yep,
just,
yep,
they say they don't have to go, they don't even go home. They work like 18 hours and stay 4 hours in the capsule and they come back.
yep.
But, but there was this thing about, the kind of Eastern mindset where, the people would go in the middle of the day, go do Tai Chi or go to a,
Okay.
to a place and meditate or, just stop, you know, take a break, be away from the noise and kind of meditate, kind of
Yeah,
Eastern philosophy. And some of that to me, I did take a lot of things from that
that's
and
cool.
it helped to like when you get, I think so many people in our modern society gets too many inputs, no way to kind of isolate the noise. Where you have more Eastern philosophies, you kind of learn things on how to kind of, steady yourself, get rid of the noise, focus on what's important, clear your mind,
Yeah,
you know, and that's a good thing to do sometimes because the world has so many inputs, we get overloaded.
it is. Overstimulation is a real problem, I think, right now for sure. Yeah. What part of Japan were you in?
I lived in Tokyo. I lived
Oh,
in an
nice.
area called Roppongi.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
Roppongi. Yeah, I was
Mota
there in March.
Mota Azabu was my neighborhood. It's right
Okay, I
off
don't
of
know.
Roppongi. Yeah, it's a
So we
little.
stayed I think it was Roppongi too, where the chef district, what was it called? Like oh, I can't remember what it was called. We were only there for about a week
Well,
and a half.
Shibuya is pretty close there. That's kinda like where the famous crossroad
Yeah,
is.
yeah, we went and did that. That was
Yeah,
on the other
Shibuya
side.
is cool. The Ginza's awesome, but, I mean, I
Yeah.
lived in the middle of Motaza was on the edge of Roppongi in an area that was
Wow.
kinda expat land.
Yeah.
They had Japanese had designated that all the expats were in this area,
Oh,
and,
interesting.
it had these, like, kinda expat-friendly apartments that
Okay.
had, like, American appliances in 'em.
Oh, that's funny.
So it was and then it was really close to a couple schools, and I
Okay.
would just, like, walk my kid to her schools, and, it was cool because I had to learn how to get cabs, and because I
Yeah.
lived there, I had to learn how to go to a grocery store and ask questions and buy food because the best way to learn the language is, like, being in it, right? So,
Yeah,
if I have to
immersing.
go to the grocery store and figure out how to get what I want, then I
Yeah.
gotta learn how to ask them what I want.
Yeah.
So, then you actually forced to learn, and I thought that was awesome. I never had done that before, and Japanese is kinda hard, but, if you're in it for 2 years, then you learn what you need to do.
Yeah. That's cool, man. You know, that's our youngest is 16 now. She's going into 10th grade, so we got 3 years left. And that's what we've decided we're gonna do as soon as in our first year of being empty nesters is go live a year in Japan.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome. It's
yeah,
awesome.
what we're gonna do, we're thinking is apply as students at a language institute and
That's a
just
good
go that
way.
way so we can get
Yeah.
a visa because we're not corporate folks, so we're not gonna get a work visa. But
Yeah, I was lucky. I got a corporate thing through an insurance company. I was an IT guy.
oh,
But,
nice.
dude, that
Yeah,
was a really awesome time in my life. I still think about it to this day. I got
I
friends
bet.
there. But it was just something that I was willing to take.
Yeah.
It was weird. My family told me, like, "Oh, it would be dangerous to go there."
No.
I had all these friends saying, "Oh, why would you do that?" Because I went in 2004 to 2006,
Okay.
and people were telling me, "Oh, 9/11, you shouldn't go that far. You should like the Japanese aren't gonna like you because you're African American. You're gonna have a hard time."
Yeah.
And it was the total opposite.
Yeah.
I felt like I felt more welcome there than I did in Springfield.
Of course.
And
Yeah, well,
people
New
did
England.
not expect that. My family didn't wanna hear that. They were like, "Oh, you're coming back, right?" It's like, "No, it's great."
Yeah. I get it, man. We were there only 12 days and we were like, that's it. This is where we want to live for a while. You
It
know,
was
we
awesome.
totally fell in love with it.
It's
Yeah.
just not my wife had been a lot further, and I said,
Yeah.
"Well, I don't need to go any further than here."
Okay. We went to Kyoto also for like 5 days. Um, but yeah, we want to go back and explore it. Both times I've been to Asia, I've just loved
Yeah,
it. And the other time was Vietnam and Hong Kong, and they were very different. But
yeah, that's different.
Japan is special.
It's a whole
Japan
different
is
world. Well, I
yeah,
like the old Shinto culture with the
Yep.
modern tech.
It's
So you
wild,
have
right? You see these
it's a
crazy modern
dichotomy.
buildings next to a temple. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the and it's kind of like that world shift. You
yeah.
have this old kind of, Shinto monk or Shinto isms and
Yeah.
people very traditional, and then you have super modern tech. That there's
Yeah.
like, people think China's this and that, but Japan is like go to Electric Town and see how techy that is. I mean, it's super.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just to me, it's like the mindset that allowed me to be able to be a kid from Springfield and not think it was impossible to be in Japan.
Yeah. I love
Knowing
it.
I couldn't speak the language, knowing I didn't know
Right.
anything, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go live there with my kid," and I think it was this mindset of like, well, why not? Like, why not do
Right.
that?
Right. That's huge, man. I applaud you for it. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
Especially you went during pre Google Translate, so that was a real.
yeah.
Now it's easy.
I didn't have a lot of AI help. I
Yeah,
had to
now
kind
you
of
just put your phone between you and the other person, and you talk back and forth, and
no, I
the
had to
phone's
go
translating.
out and like I had to take class. I was taking
Okay.
classes and I had a sensei and I said, well, how
Oh
do
wow.
I use a cab to get to Shinjuku? How do
Yeah.
Shinjuku? How do I get back from Shinjuku?
Yeah.
And I figured out ways. So my house was like three. Well, it was like a couple of. It was near a fire station. So I
Okay.
learned how to say it was like three. It was like this street and then turn left at the fire station
Yeah.
and then go to like three houses down, and I
Yeah.
learned how to say the number of my house. So I had to learn like what is the bare minimum that the cab driver needs to know,
Yeah.
right? And then I started learning all the places I needed to go, and I would have these cheat sheet like little index cards,
Yeah.
and then I eventually, because I had to do it all the time, I started memorizing them, and
Yeah.
then I actually started like processing what was I saying, and it started like connecting. It's like, oh, that's I know what I'm saying now.
Yeah.
And it's like language. Our brain kind of learns language eventually once you
That's right.
let go that you don't know
Well,
it.
especially like the way you did it, which was immersing in it, right? That's
Yeah.
the right way to do it. That's
Yes, I
awesome.
think it's the only way to do it.
Yeah. 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 I
But
remember first time I went to a foreign country where I didn't know the language was Germany, and I got this book like language hacking. Uh, I forget the guy's name, but and he basically said just learn some basic stuff and go out there and talk even if you don't know. And I was like, that's so weird. How could you do that? But then I started thinking about it the other way. How many times do I see people come here from another country and they attempt to speak English to me? I'm never thinking like, oh, what is this guy? They don't know English. Like, come on, you try to help them, right? And you
yeah,
try to
yeah,
say
yeah.
it right and all, and that's exactly what happens. That's human nature. We try to want to help people. And
Yeah, that's what I found. People used to help me at the grocery store, help me at the
totally.
department store. They would help me like, and I'd figure it out, and I
Yeah.
started to, and it was just cool. To me, it
Yeah.
was just so cool
Yeah.
to actually, have a win. It's like I actually was able to go to the grocery store and ask somebody where something was, and they
Yeah.
actually told me, and I figured
Yeah.
it out. Like, oh my god, it's such a big win. It's like it doesn't seem like a big win, but it felt like a
Yeah,
big
no, it
win.
becomes a game, right? Like you leveled up, man. Next time I'm gonna get eggs and milk.
Yeah, it's like how do you
Yeah,
do that? But
right.
yeah, it's
That's
just a
fun.
growth mindset, that we
Yeah,
got to get into
that's
to
right.
get past barriers. I mean, there are
That's right.
people that like, they got these mind barriers that seem insurmountable.
That's right.
And it's like, there's so many things that you can do.
Yeah,
And then a lot of times we put a glass ceiling on ourselves and it's really like you just got to change that mind frame.
yeah, yeah. Phantom, what do you think it developed for you? Did you grow up with that, you think, or did your parents instill that in you, or
They actually had a lot of fear. My
yeah,
my parents, they were kind of comfortable with me staying in Springfield my rest of my life.
yeah.
They wanted me to just stay there.
And are you there now?
No, I'm in New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
have my I kind of left.
Yeah.
I immediately decided like eventually like I just felt like I did not want to be confined to Springfield.
Sure.
I felt like I needed to get out. Uh and my father had been very comfortable being there.
Yeah.
He was a salesman. His father was a factory worker. but he
Okay.
became a salesman, and he was really good at that. He wanted me to take over his insurance sales block, be a partner with him,
Yeah.
and I'm like, nah, I'm not really into that. And he had a lot of friends. He had a big network,
Yeah.
and it would have been easy to kind of jump in on that network
Yeah.
and just be father and son business, and we would have had our own business. But I like, no, I wanted to do something different,
Yeah.
so I chose to go away from it. But
Gotcha.
that was my choice.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about New England in particular. It's really like one big region with a ton of small towns, right? It's very towny, and everybody identifies with their town, and I think that's something that you see more so in New England, I think, than anywhere else I've ever lived. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, family businesses and people wanna stay
Yeah.
in the tradition,
That's right.
um, and so there's a tendency to want people to do that, and I
Yeah.
tended to it's like, "Nah, I wanna do something different," but, my brother did too. It's like all of us. I have 2 brothers. Like, my older brother went into the Marine Corps. Now
Okay.
he lives in Texas,
Okay.
and my younger brother, he was in Florida, and then he ended up moving to Texas, but he's an attorney.
Okay.
So he went another direction. So, like, we're all doing different things, you know?
That's
And
cool.
my older brother is military, ex-Marine Corps doing, like, security work, and he actually learned medical work, so he's like a medical
Yeah.
assistant, and, brother's like, an attorney that's, a corporate level attorney, and I'm in IT and podcasting and music.
Yeah.
So we all went different didn't go into my dad's business at all,
That's funny.
which he wanted one of us to do that, we didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm seeing now I interact with a lot of like private equity firms, hedge funds, and a lot of them are going into New England right now because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's been a lot of family run businesses that aren't getting passed down, and they're buying them and they're consolidating it, rolling them up and forming these bigger
Oh,
empires. And
yeah, there's probably a
yeah,
lot of opportunity in that because, like, that's kinda like the ethos
mhm,
of
yeah,
the area. Everybody's got, like, these family businesses everywhere,
yeah,
and then you get generations like me that we don't wanna do it.
that's right.
They just gotta move to somebody somebody's gotta take it.
Yeah, and I've heard some stories where people, the kids don't want the families to sell out their business, and they get these big numbers thrown at them from these hedge funds and such, and the kid's like, nah, it's my family's business, got to keep it going. Okay, well, why don't you go run it? Why don't you go work in it? None of them want to do that, so
It was yeah, so it's
you
gonna
got to pick
happen.
one or the other, right?
One
It's
or the
like,
other. Yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah,
There's always just different, ways to look at things. Yeah, I
hmm
never thought about that about New England, but now you bring it to mind, it makes a
yeah,
lot
and
of sense.
really, it's just the towny, I think, mentality everywhere, but a lot of regions aren't as segmented, I think, as New England. I could be wrong, but
No,
probably.
I've been grew up in Massachusetts, went to school in Maine, live in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
So I get so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still
yeah,
in New England, but I'm not in Springfield. But I'm a
yeah.
different but I'm
No,
still
and
in the
that
same
matters. That matters a ton. Yeah, I mean, all my friends, they all none of them live in Central Falls anymore. Everybody talks about, yeah, they live in Lincoln or Smithfield or somewhere else. It's very important to say they're not in the town that we grew up in.
yeah, my older brothers,
Yeah.
they went all the way to Texas. It's like they said, "Well, you're still in New England. We're in
Yeah.
Texas." It's like, "Yeah, but you gotta deal with that Texas weather," which I'm
Yeah.
glad I don't have to deal with.
Yeah, but you meet people from, like, I went to school, like I said, in Northeastern. You get a lot of people from like Long Island or upstate Jersey, New York or Jersey, and same kind of thing. But they all, I think everybody aspires definitely to get out, but not just get out like of that community or that vicinity, that region, but maybe get out of that state, get out of that part of the country,
Mhm.
maybe get out of the country altogether. You know what I mean? They
Yeah,
just aspire to really
yeah,
go big, right, in the move. So
yeah. But that's why I went to Japan. 'Cause I was trying to go big.
that's cool.
I wanted to stay there longer. I just didn't get to. Um,
Yeah. I get it, man. Once I went there, that's it. We're committed. We're gonna go check it out too. Maybe we'll end up staying there if we can figure out how.
yeah,
But I don't
there's
know.
there's always a way if you just gotta angle it. I've been trying to figure out a way
To
to
get
kinda
back.
do
Well, come to school with us, man. We'll be classmates. Go
do a
get that
global
student
podcast.
visa.
But I
That's
did
right.
do a global podcast and focus on Japanese.
Yeah.
Get a NTT, we get one of their big networks to support it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And then,
one of my big reasons for keeping the podcast now, the reasons for getting into it are different than why I still do it now. And part of it is to build a business around it that will allow us to become nomadic, because so much of what I do is on site. I sell real estate in Denver, so I have to be here for it. And,
mhm. Yeah, if you
you
can
know,
become more global, then you could be anywhere.
100%. Yeah. And the podcast, I think, is going to be my mechanism for that. Plus, I just enjoy it.
Well,
You know.
it's a cool mechanism, and there's ways to kind of upscale.
Yeah.
Depends on if you can get, you know, sponsors. You can get on. I've had potential opportunities that I've kind of decided to go with or not go with, but yeah, I think this area is a lot of growth in podcasting. There's a lot of angles on it,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of ways to expand it. So I think, yeah, there's remote. I mean, I'm a remote IT worker,
Right.
so the two things I do, I could be in Barbados, in my wife's country, on the beach doing it. You know,
Amazing.
you could. There's nothing to stop you. There's a lot. I know a lot of guys that do that. They're in Jamaica. They're in Barbados. That they're working their job from the Caribbean.
Yeah, that's amazing.
'Cause you
So
can.
if you got a lot more experience with podcasting than I do, what inning would you say we're in with the podcasting world?
Well, we're at this level where it's kind of like the second inning now, because
Yeah.
we have a lot of podcasters, but successful podcasters we don't have a lot.
Hmm.
So the people who stick with it are like in the top like 5%, less than that.
Sure.
There's a lot of people getting in the game, but they don't stay in the game.
Right.
Like the core is to, stick with it, keep on showing up, level up as technology comes up. You take advantage of the technical capabilities, take advantage of, tools that help you book guests, tools that help you do your SEO, tools that help you, migrate your editing tools. There's a lot of things you can do to
Yeah.
level up and increase the quality, sound quality, video quality, get sponsorships, get backers,
Yeah.
figure out how to monetize, and then link, with other companies and organizations, and start, taking your podcast and then doing webinars. I've been entertaining, because I'm a musician, producer, and a
Yeah.
podcaster. I've been entertaining, creating like a Phantom Electric Ghost webinar series about like, how did I do it? How do
Yeah.
I do this? How do I do music creation? Right? I'm a musician. I'm a sound designer.
Yeah.
We'll do a sound design webinar series. Do a podcast creation, distribution series. How do you do
Yeah.
it? How do you create, your show? What do you do? So if you start to, make subgroups and then get people to sign up, there's all kinds of ways to monetize. And so there's a
Yeah.
whole nother level where you start doing that and then get picked up by the big guys, to Joe Rogan level.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a whole different level. You don't have to be at that Joe Rogan level though. You
Yeah.
can actually do pretty good without being at that level. But
Right. Yeah. Neat. Yeah. I'm going to go check out the podcast movement conference this year in DC. It was actually in Denver last year, and I signed up, but I was working, and so I didn't get to participate much.
oh yeah, networking's good. Those type of things are
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Well,
Great
maybe off the air, I'd love to pick your brain about those resources you're talking about, and love to put a little
Yeah,
list
yeah,
together.
yeah. You can always
Yeah.
like ping me. We can be off the side. But thank you again for being on the show. I think we have a really cool dynamic discussion, which is the point of why I do this.
Yeah.
Is
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
have a real
I really appreciate
conversation.
it.
So yeah, so it's great. So yeah, feel free to ping me. We can have a little side talk about things. We'll figure
Okay.
something out. But thank you again for being on the show tonight.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been a real honor. I'm humbled. Really appreciate it.
Have a good night.